Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. There might be some people popping on as we get things rolling. So, I first just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, taking time out of your evening. Like I said, we have people from all different time zones. I know it's later on the East Coast. But so our plan is to, some of you may have joined our webinar that we hosted in January. We will be doing webinars every month on various topics. Next month, we will be presenting on Parkinson's disease. So make sure to just check emails. You should be part of our email list, so you will be getting those communications as they go out. But with any of these webinars, ultimately our goal is to provide value to you guys, right? And most importantly, to give you hope, whether this is for your own recovery journey or for someone you love. Really, we just want to be educational and supportive, right? We're not going to be able to cover everything in an hour. It's a short amount of time. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to brain recovery, but our goal is to really help you get a better understanding of what recovery can look like beyond perhaps what you've been told, right? So, an outline for this evening, we're going to begin by hearing a very powerful and inspiring recovery story. And then Dr. Omar Ahmad will be walking us through kind of the science and how the science has changed in TBI recovery and what we're learning through neuroanimation. And then if time allows, which I'm hoping it will, we'll do some Q&A as well. If anyone has to leave at any point, this webinar will be recorded, and I will be sure to send out the recording after the call this evening. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to our Chief Marketing Officer at Neuroanimation, Sean Ireland, to introduce our first guest.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out today. I have a really good feeling about what you're going to take away from this tonight. I am just so proud to be able to introduce to you our speaker. She has been a friend of mine for, golly, I want to say close to 40 years, but I'm not going to stand behind that because I don't want to hear those numbers ever come back up again, ever.
No, it's true.
But Tony Burkholder and her husband, Bruce, I've known them for years. And I knew Tony when she literally went from, this is the guy I love, this is the man I marry. Now I'm having quadruplets, what's happening to my life. And then here comes Mark, her son Mark came along many years later. But basically, this was a family that always just surrounded themselves with love for Mark. And whoever knew that journey would become something that the family had to dig down deeper for and be there for him forever. Our paths crossed again years later, back and forth. And here we are now. Our common denominator neuroanimation and the hopefulness that is happening right now in Mark's life, in the family's life, because of neuroanimation. So I'm so proud to be able to be here. She's an amazing person, a warrior like no other. She's an advocate. She is a mom to be reckoned with, this lady, and love her to pieces. So I'm so happy we could all hear her journey, and hopefully it'll inspire you for your own personal journeys as well. There you go, girl. That's all I got for you.
Great. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate the kind words, and your friendship over the years has been invaluable and means the world to me. So, as Sean said, I do have 5 children, 4 the same age, and one who was born 19 months later, and his name is Mark. And just to give you a little bit of background on his accident, when he was 15, he was skating on a longboard, holding onto the back of a car in our neighborhood and going about 35 miles an hour, lost his balance, hit his head, and that resulted in at the time, we just thought a concussion, and, he's going to be laid up for a little while. But over time, the next 8 hours, his brain swelled and he ended up having a severe TBI, bilateral frontal lobe damage, and was in the hospital for 6 months. Was in a coma for a month, went through liver failure, which actually ended up resolving itself, which was a pure miracle by itself. but he did spend 6 months at Children's Hospital in Columbus. We went through 2 years of outpatient PTOT and speech, and just went on learning what it is to be a survivor of TBI and doing everything we could possibly do to help him get better. My life's purpose and goal in life is to help him. And the last 15 years, I've done everything imaginable to try to help him, including 250 dives in the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, multiple inpatient, outpatient, went to the Barrick Brain Center in Atlanta. I went to Maryland and worked with the U.S. Army with a program that they had trying to help with TBI. Just everything I could possibly think of to help him. He's had a relatively good recovery based on, what could or could not happen with TBI. When he was in the hospital, he could only move his left arm. He couldn't walk, talk, eat, all of that. When he left the hospital, he walked out on his own and was able to talk, you know, the way that he could talk. And since then, physically, he does fairly well. He does have right side weakness. He has speech issues. He's very impulsive, and he's a severe fall risk because he decides he's going to get up and go across the room, and he trips because of his right side weakness. He just has a lot of this things that you probably are all have heard about or are used to. Overall, compared to what it could be, he's doing pretty well, but I still want to do everything we could possibly do to help him. And it's been 15 years, and was really kind of getting discouraged up and down throughout the 15 years, but most recently, pretty discouraged. And then Sean called me and said, "Have you heard of neuroanimation?" Which I had not, and I was interested in it, but in all honesty, very cautiously optimistic, because I'd tried everything imaginable, and really not many things were helping. But I talked to Omar and I talked to Sean, and we decided we were going to give it a shot, because if I hadn't, and things, I just couldn't let myself not do it. I had to try one more time to do something to help him. So we went through 3 weeks of boot camp, which for Mark, that's somewhat hard to do because he doesn't always want to cooperate. He's very stubborn. He's 6'3", 230 pounds, red hair, and very fiery. So if he doesn't want to do something, he's not going to do it. But we were able to get him to go through 3 weeks of the boot camp. After that, I was really kind of disappointed at first because nothing really happened. And then I started thinking, well, it's been 15 years, and what could I expect? Nothing was promised. No one said, okay, at the end of the 3 weeks, he's going to do this. So we kind of went for about 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, and I'm going to try to do this without crying. All of a sudden, he started speaking. He has speech issues. He started speaking in full sentences and responding appropriately. He has a habit of using what I call junk words, and he would use words to fill in when he's trying to think of what it is he wants to say. He wasn't doing that. He was actually responding and answering questions, or just responding in ways that were appropriate. And my son, who works with him and lives with him, we both were just, oh my gosh, what's going on? He's like, his speech is improving. So that is a very real thing that he did and is continuing to do. We're continuing to see it. I I'm with him every single day, and I talk to him every day on Facebook or FaceTime, and his speech is improving. In addition to that, one thing he did from the very beginning was he holds his mouth very wide open, and he kind of looks like he's screaming all the time, which he's not. And because of that, he would drool a lot, and he would feel bad about that, and it just made him feel like there was something wrong with him. Because in his mind, he doesn't have anything wrong with him. He knows he had a brain injury, but that's about as far as he's willing to go. Um, so he is not drooling anymore. Sorry, it's raining. Um, he is not drooling anymore because his mouth is um, closed better, um, closed more, and that's huge because it's not completely closed, but it is closed significantly. And in fact, we went to the dentist today, and the dentist noticed it as well. So again, trying not to cry, um, he just feels better about himself because he's not drooling all over the place, and he looks, better. Um, that's the only thing I can attribute that to is neuroanimation. Um, Another thing, he has a lack of initiative where he will do things when I ask him to do them. If we try to do an activity, he'll do it eventually. Um, a couple of weeks ago, after he went through therapy, he got up and walked over to the table and picked up a book. It was a book, Facebook book that, because he has a Facebook page, and I had it made into a book that talks about every day of his recovery. And he went over and had pictures in it. He went over and picked it up and started looking at it and sat down and started looking at the pictures and was laughing and enjoying the book on his own. And that is significant because he just doesn't, he's never done that before since his accident. He never initiated any um, any activity like that. And the only thing I can attribute it to, again, is the therapy they had at Neuroanimation. The people there have all been so helpful. And therapists, we've been through a lot of therapists. We go to therapy at Ohio State University, and they have a million therapists, and we've been through them all, and they're all good. But the ones at Neuroanimation were just friendly and caring and understanding. I mean, he's difficult. He doesn't always want to do something. They have to convince him to go back into the room. But once he gets back there, he's locked in, which again is something I was very surprised at. So the whole program has just been life-changing for us because we're willing to do anything and everything we can do to help him. And this is something that has helped him recently. We've just not had it happen. So, I mean, I'm extremely grateful for the program and for Sean and Omar and everybody. So that's my story.
Thank you, Tony. And you never have to apologize for crying. It's an emotional journey that you've been on. So we're really grateful and appreciate you sharing this part of Mark's journey. And you're coming back, right? You're going to be
Yes,
back.
actually, we started last week. Yes.
Started last week for the second program, which is
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. So thank you for taking time to share with us.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to now hand it over to Dr. Ahmad to really talk about what's happening in the brain during recovery and why and how did Mark, these things kind of happen during that 3-week boot camp. So I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Tony. That was a wonderful introduction into Mark. And I wanted to say that he brings a lot of joy into our center also. And it's just radiant and it's vibrant, and we love having him here. And I think there's so much of that healing and energy and warrior spirit in him that reflects what we do. And it's just such a wonderful thing to see here. So I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. This is really exciting. in March. March is actually Brain Injury Awareness Month, but it's super exciting for the hope that we can offer, Tony and Mark and so many other people, not just after their first program, but what we're learning we can continue to do. And we truly don't know the limits. And there's some breakthrough science that's occurred in the last year, and particularly in the last month, not from us. This is from some of the best researchers in the world on the brain, but it applies to us and it meets with what we do in a very synergistic way. And I hope you take away from that just how historical this moment is in neuroscience. It truly is. And so, the title is How Neuroscience is Changing Recovery After Traumatic Brain Injury. And really, I want to focus on mental clarity and overall cognitive recovery. There's many things we do with neuroanimation, both in movement and cognition, but this is really about the cognitive aspect of things. So again, March is Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness Month, and traumatic brain injury is really two types of things that happen to the brain. One is immediate mechanical damage, and the other is secondary. And actually, you heard about both with Mark. A primary mechanical damage that then can go into a secondary damage. The primary damage, someone has a force or a concussive impact, and neurons can actually shear and tear from rotational forces. So there's an actual physical damage that occurs there. But the secondary injury is what is really drawn out, and it deals with disruptions in what we call the neurovascular unit. But what that means is the relationship between energy demand in the brain and blood flow. And there's inflammation and there's processes where that gets disrupted. And it's kind of a biological cascade where further damage can occur. And so you can see symptoms develop even years after the initial TBI, or within 6 months in the acute period. You see brain fog, poor focus, memory failure, mental fatigue, physical abnormalities, slow thinking, not understanding, a lack of expression, so expressive aphasia. And the point that I want you to take out of this from all the symptoms and the impairments that arise is it's related to overall neuronal structures and blood flow in the brain. So there's this symbiotic relationship that gets disrupted in TBI. So most TBI survivors are told some version of this by doctors, which is this is as good as it gets. And Tony was on a mission where she's looking for all these different things, which is the way, it's unfortunate because the medical industry doesn't provide that for them. Recovery will plateau after months, brain damage is permanent, cognitive problems are lifelong. These are the things that they're told. And one of the reasons why this is the standard of care in brain injury is because, and why this belief has shaped, neurology for decades, is there really isn't anything patients can be given. There are no drugs. The drugs that they do have are actually very, very toxic and they have very little effect. So when you go to your neurologist, there's really nothing you can do. And the question, of course, the one we ask is, what if that assumption is completely wrong? And what are the implications if that assumption is wrong? What is the science that would support the notion that that's a wrong assumption? And again, if it's wrong, what does it mean for hope, for recovery, for options? And options we can finally give patients and clients. And I want to circle back to that point about hope, that, what does it mean, for recovery and hope if we can do something and we can keep turning what we can do to keep improving. And the real highlight here is that what if the brain could actually rebuild? And for decades in neuroscience, they assume that adults cannot generate new neurons. And so what if that is, well, to get to the point, that assumption now is completely collapsing. So one of the reasons why we had a plateau is that we really didn't try much or recommend much is because scientists assumed adults can't generate new neurons. This was a hot debate for over a decade. Once you collapse this idea and you say, okay, let's say that, adults can generate new neurons. What are the implications of that? What can we do with that? And how powerful is that? And so this is where neuroscience is intersecting with neuroanimation, and this is actually what we're doing. So this was a major, major scientific breakthrough in the last year. I encourage everybody to Google it about new neurons, superagers. And what the 3 points that you should really take away is that one, adult brains do grow new neurons. They're produced in a region called the hippocampus and in a subregion called the dentate gyrus. So I hope you learn a little bit of neurobiology from this talk. And they are the key to brain health. This is the really important point, is that these new neurons, which occur in adults, they're critical to how we think about repair and what we should be doing for repair. So these are just a few headlines which came out in the news less than 2 weeks ago. Okay. Superagers with great memory have more young brain cells. The science behind the superager brain. Brains of superagers are strong producers of new neurons. Superagers' secret ingredient may be the growth of new brain cells. And superagers is certainly one implication of this. And preventing Alzheimer's is another, which they talk about in these papers. But the implications are far, far bigger. And I think it's just a truism that if we have the ability to generate new brain cells and new neurons, they can help with all sorts of ailments. And I'll get into exactly why that's true. So first, there's a little neuron factory in all of our brains. Everyone has one. And it's in the hippocampus, at the very end of the hippocampus, in a place called the dentate gyrus. And this is the place where all the magic is happening, the dentate gyrus of the hippocampus. It creates new neurons, and then those new neurons proliferate throughout other areas of the hippocampus, responsible for cognitive planning, for learning, for memory, for speech processing. It integrates all the other parts of the brain for different types of autonomic motor control, for motor learning. So it's a very, very critical area of the brain. And that little factory is sitting there producing neurons for the hippocampus. So when that factory gets disrupted, the hippocampus will actually shrink. And so what happens there is you will get all sorts of diseases, okay? So in people when the hippocampus is smaller, we see that evident in traumatic brain injury. So dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, chronic stroke, ADHD, autism, epilepsy, stress, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, even autism on the people on the autism spectrum. So again, in our factory, new neurons are migrating within hippocampal circuits. They're integrating into memory networks. They're improving cognitive resilience. But when that factory isn't working right, none of that happens and the hippocampus shrinks. So this explains why we can create superagers with new neurons and why when that growth doesn't happen, the hippocampus shrinks and we get disease and we get symptoms. So it's a very simple thing to understand with neuron growth, what you can do with it. It not just keeps you normal, it makes you a super performer. But if you don't have that growth, your brain shrinks and you have all these diseases. So the symptoms in TBI are related to this shrinkage, and they're related to this atrophy, and it comes from disruptions in the way blood flows into the brain after TBI. So even over time, you'll get degradation and you'll get that atrophy, which causes more and more symptoms. So we have two pieces to this puzzle. So the first, we just talked about the first part. So we have new neurons. We know they increase the volume of this place called the hippocampus. They're created in this little factory called the dentate gyrus, and it leads to brain health. Well, that's fabulous. But how do we actually amp this up? How do we turn on that little factory and maximize it? Well, that's where neuroanimation comes in. And what we do is we figured out a way to stimulate the little factory, the dentate gyrus, and create new neurons. And we have one of the most incredible papers uh, that happened with this new neuronal growth that is being published. We presented at the Alzheimer's and Dementia Conference in 2025, and that showed we could actually grow these subregions. So we were activating dentate gyrus in a very, very special way. And again, we kind of made history by doing the second part of it. So again, there's two pieces to the puzzle. One is that we can create new neurons, and two, we can actually stimulate that part to grow the brain and to create them. We showed increases in the subiculum and so the memory region and one of the planning and integrating regions of the brain. It was unprecedented growth. This had never been shown before. We grew the subiculum, which is a very important part, about 4 to 6% in volume after a 12-week program. And just to give people context, when you hit 50, every year your hippocampus, your subiculum will decline about 1 to 2% because your neuron factory isn't active. So what we're able to do is basically reverse that. Now, how do we do that is what people want to know. Like, how does neuroanimation actually drive this neurogenesis or this creation of new neurons? And what we do is we do a couple of things. We do quite a few things, but it also turns out that this area of the brain, the dentate gyrus, the neuron factory, it is active in motor learning, not motor execution, but motor learning. So learning something new that's very, very complex with cognition and with movement. So what we do in our theater when our clients come in is they do constant complex 3D motor planning with continuous sensory feedback, dynamic goal-directed behavior. So you're not telling someone to simply go pick something up where they're executing a motor command. The brain has to constantly figure out what they're doing in their motor planning. And because they do this, it activates dentate gyrus in a way that no other activity and no other intervention can. There's many other things, I don't want to get too technical, that we add into the program in order to stimulate it. But the result is the growth. And that's how we've shown it. And also, of course, the incredible results that we're having with our clients. So it's not just the brain growth, it's the cognitive improvements that we show. So again, neuroanimation is deeply tied to motor learning, which is then tied to the neuroplasticity. Motor learning and motor activation are very different things. You're not motor learning when you're just moving, even when the movement is hard. Motor learning is something like when you're learning the piano. It's those critical regions where it's really, really hard to move and your brain is trying to figure it out, or say a surgeon learning a brand new technique that they've never done before. So we've been able to isolate this activity of motor learning and extract it for hours on end, where people are planning, adapting, executing movements. They're not just repeating things. And this is where we see these amazing results, these miraculous results come in. It's because we're able to activate that part of the brain in a way that nothing else can. And then it leads to the new neuronal growth. Even outside of brain growth, it's been known in the scientific literature that true motor learning is one of the strongest known drivers of synaptic growth, upregulation of residual pathways. What that means is there's some pathways in the brain which are kind of offline, and after brain injury, they can turn online again to take over functionality, and ultimately lasting neuroplastic change. And that leads to new movements and strong cognitive gains. And so with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the incredible cognitive recoveries that we've seen at neuroanimation and that we continue to see. Janeth is one of my favorite stories and cases at neuroanimation. And the reason why is because we got her from a very difficult state to, I would say, not just normal, but even beyond, almost super performer level. She had a stroke about a year and a half and some ago. She had an anticoagulant which helped with her motor recovery, so it's called TPA, but she had lingering cognitive problems. Those cognitive problems manifested the inability to do math and physics. She had problems with driving. She felt very anxious. She wasn't confident. She wasn't able to concentrate more than a few minutes at a time, up to the point where her advisor, she was a faculty member at OSU, but her advisor told her to leave. And she couldn't do physics anymore. She had I'd say, almost a complete resolution in that she can do math and physics. She has an incredible amount of confidence. She can do abstract thinking, complex problem solving, improved motivation. And we saw this on her cognitive testing every day. We saw it go up. And we see this with the gains that Tony was talking about. We actually see it and we watch it. We watch it go up. So it's not just the subjective gains which clients see. And sometimes it does take 2 weeks for those new neurons to settle into new networks, and that we keep doing these things to activate them. But we see them growing. We see the improvements growing. And that's, I think, the most hope we can give here is we don't know the limit. So we know we can keep growing, and we know we can keep activating the brain. A lot of our clients will report to us for their cognitive recovery that they're able to say things and articulate things that they weren't able to before. So speech is actually a very big one, and being able to say new words or draw upon new things, it's usually a great sign for us because it's pretty consistent with what we see. Language returns. We had a bilingual client who spoke fluent Arabic and English, but just after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's and dementia, he couldn't use English. By the end of the program, he was speaking fluently with our coaching staff. Mental clarity is the big one because it kind of encapsulates all of the things that we're able to do for people. We don't really know the limits of what we're doing, and it's exciting to see clients come through and have improvements that we can then work on and continue the improvements with them. One of our clients, Jackie Miller, she had a wonderful quote, which was, "It's weird and very cool to feel the quiet places in my brain wake up again, tiny sparks turning into steady light onward." It's a very beautiful description of how that works. So across all of our clients, this is actually early. We have more data now we need to compile, which show even stronger results. We see very strong cognitive gains. So these tests, the average gain here was shown at about 37%, which is enormous. These things are statistically significant at, I think, 6, 7%. And those are usually the numbers that are achieved. These numbers are, 4 or 5 times higher than anything that's really done out there in the industry. And of course, we see people continue to gain as they go through programs, and we see people moving from abnormal to normal to even super performer. And that's everyone we want to kind of move into that category. We are, motor impairment and cognitive impairment, they're related. So dexterity is really a cognitive task. And so we see in in movement disorders, we see small new movements develop that we can layer and add on, and people developing that. But with dexterity, I wanted to show a really neat video of Mark actually, where he didn't have this level of fine motor dexterity in the beginning of the program. This is, I think, a week and a half into it, where he's developed a much more precise pincer task. And I'll play the video.
Yeah, when this was happening, my son and I were both going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness.
Are you serious? Are you serious? Wow. Funny boys.
That's part of that wonderful spirit that he brings every day to our center. Um, so we do have, and we just bringing up this slide on chronic stroke, which is we have for the first clients that we studied, it was a 10-point average gain on an upper extremity motor test, which is far higher than anything else that's out there. These tests are sometimes they don't accurately reflect the level of motor kind of improvement that we get because it's so fine and the dexterity is so fine that there's a lot more going on. So you almost need a new test to cover, what these gains actually look like. So with that, I think I'm gonna stop the presentation and go into questions that anybody might have on neuroanimation and the therapy. So please ask away.
And just as a reminder, you are muted, so make sure to click that microphone to unmute yourself and ask a question. You can also type it into the chat if you'd rather do that as well.
Oh yeah, there's a
Hi.
questions. So do you know if the beta neuroanimation game triggers motor learning? Has it been tested? So are you talking about what we give at home, the supplement program to our clients, the VR program?
I'm assuming she's,
And this
yeah.
is from Susan. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we've tested blood flow with the VR program, which does show an increase. And so, but we haven't done a formal study. We don't advocate it for the efficacy at all. This is mainly a community building stopgap between programs at the center where we do have the clinical evidence and where we're about to publish two big papers on the evidence that we've seen from the room. We will continue to do studies, though, on other methods of delivery of the program, to maximize it. But it's really important for us to have our specialists consolidate. We call it consolidation, but they do activities that help with you once you have growth, you also have to do things to kind of consolidate those pathways. And that's a little bit of why there could be a delay sometimes. A lot of our clients do say, I mean, they get gains in the beginning, but then they're like, they wait a week and they see the gains growing more and more. And we see tipping points, we see all sorts of things with the program. So the VR is mainly to keep them connected to our community, in those spaces. I have another question, which is, um, yep, Angela. So it's appropriate for 30. Yes, it's very appropriate for 13-year-olds. We've had our youngest client has been 10, 9 years old. Yep. Yes, it has to be done in person at our center. We just opened our second center in Kentucky, as we have one in Kentucky and Ohio. We do plan to be in most of the country somewhere in 2027. Um, it's yeah, I mean, so if you're physically intact, it's going to be very effective because you're, able to do the therapy with complete dexterity. Can you share a bit about what the program involves? How does it work? Is it in or outpatient? So you could think of it as an outpatient center. So it's a facility. We have studios. They're very, very sophisticated. A client walks in, 12 cameras surround them. They track every movement. It's markerless. It's better fidelity for being markerless than most, even Hollywood motion capture. We Then they engage in the program. It's a program where they're basically motor learning interactively with virtual animals that we've created. It maps their movements into the synthetic, we call them synthetic nervous systems. And it's a massive, again, cognitive load for motor learning on the dentate gyrus. And we do this for an hour. In our 3-week program, when you travel there, you do an hour, and then you do consolidation for an hour, and then we do another hour of the therapy. And then we also have a 12-week program where we do 2 hours a week, and then we are now working with consolidation activities that are to be done at home in both programs. And we try to stay connected now to all of our clients and understand their journey, not just during the program, but after they leave. This is a very long-term commitment to our clients. How should the consolidation be done with the VR program? So we're still building the program. I would say just in general, what activities you are looking, to improve and to gain neuronal growth and functioning with, those are the activities you should be doing. So one interesting thing is clients that are naturally immersed in the thing they're trying to improve, they become super performers. So, if you're trying, Janet's case is she's trying to do physics, she can't do physics, she's hit this wall, she does neuroanimation. Now every day she's trying to do physics, and we see these explosive growths in cognitive functioning, measurable, and also subjectively. So I would just do the activity you want to do. If it's gait, it's hiking, whatever is you're capable of. That's kind of the short-term solution, but long-term, we're going to structure programs that are outside our center for the consolidation part. Another question is, does the type of brain injury change the type of therapy given at neuroanimation stroke versus TBI versus Parkinson's, for example? No, the neuroanimation therapy itself is universal. That's the neuronal factory, activity. And that part stays exactly the same. It's just optimized to maximize the new neurons we can give you. Now that you have new neurons, how do we integrate them to the rest of your brain? That part will change. And that does depend on the type of either condition or goals of the particular client. So we try to do consolidation activities, again, that reflect the goal of the client. So if you have a very strong deficit in one area, we work on doing tasks that tap into that void. So cognitive games, can you repeat? No, we don't actually recommend cognitive games. There isn't evidence that cognitive games alone can stimulate the dentate gyrus to generate new neurons. There's no supporting scientific literature for that. What they can maybe, you can get good at certain things like that are related to the game itself, but you need this intersection between motor and cognition in order to stimulate the dentate gyrus. That's what it responds to. It responds to 3D spatial planning, proprioceptive movement, all this sort of motor integrated with cognition. Is the program helpful for a young adult? Yes, it will be. So the hippocampus it's the negative knob for stress and anxiety. So the hypothalamus is the axis that produces cortisol, and it creates a stress response in the body. And the hippocampus is the thing that actually regulates the stress response of the hypothalamus. It's actually the subiculum, the part that we grew and strengthened, that regulates that. So think of it as a minus, right, to the plus of the stress. One of the most common, if not the most common effects we see is mood uplifting out of the program. And that's coming from anxiety regulation and stress response. So it's very, very effective for anxiety and stress. Does it improve with mobility if the patient is paralyzed on the left side and can't walk and can't use the left hand? So we get new movement is our strongest claim with our clients, and the things that we've seen. It starts off small but very meaningful. So these are areas that didn't move before, and now they can move, and we just continue to layer and work on those. So it's not going to be fast when you have a new movement, but it's very significant. And it's also very meaningful for clients. So someone who isn't able to move their thumb and all of a sudden is able to move their thumb. Having that said, we have had a few people who started at the high end who did get, I'd say, total functional recovery from a hand. They did have good movement. One of our clients couldn't move their thumb, and it looks completely normal now. Her name is Whitney. She was a stroke client. Maddie, one of our star clients, has developed an incredible amount of use of her hand and opening and closing it that she didn't have before. So we continue to work on that for our clients. No, we have not had any. I don't believe we've had any clients that from TBI due to self-inflicted gunshot wound, but the mechanism would be the same, right? We were generating new neurons. We want those new neurons to proliferate to help with the injured site. Please build a center in Northern California. Deal, Susan, we will. You can hold me to that. We will build one in Northern California. So we're very excited to spread this around the country. Susan actually gave us some really great suggestions and advice the other day, and she's a client of ours, and it's just amazing that we have such wonderful clients who participate not just in our program, but in helping us better our program. So thank you, Susan, and we will be there. Sorry, another question. Have you seen cognitive gains in individuals specifically with diffuse axonal injuries? I have to check. Gigi, have we?
Don't think I've seen
I don't.
specifically. There's no reason why not.
My son also does photobiomodulation. Would this be an issue? Can he continue PBM in conjunction with neuroanimation? Yeah, there wouldn't be any interference with that at all. No, they won't. Stents and blood thinners don't interfere with the therapy. In MPT with left hemiplegia, will this be yes. So we do get, about 30% of our clients are stroke. We do see very strong new movement gains with hemiplegia. New neuronal growth for movement is almost non-existent outside of neuroanimation, right? I mean, you can get strengthening, but new movements are that's our passion for stroke. We really want to see new movements and we work on them. Again, the exciting thing is we don't know the limit. So we are seeing layering, meaning people come in for one, they get a certain amount of movement, they come in again, they get more movement, they get more movement. So, we're a startup, so we're continuing our development of the programs, but I think there will be even more development for people who come in 3-4 times. We would advance the program to more difficulty to help with those gains. Arizona, yes, we are actually actively looking in Arizona to expand. This is, I think, 4th on our list of expansion. So it's very close. We have one of our partners he is a wonderful philanthropist who has a center in Arizona. So that's why it's kind of on our radar in a strong way. Are you working to trying to get insurance covered? Eventually it will be. The results are so strong, I'd say in about 3 years. It's important for us to get this out there now and to innovate and to offer it to people. I think it would be a disservice if we didn't, right? And a lot of people do find ways of support to pay for the program. We keep it as accessible as possible to clients. But eventually, I think in 3 to 5 years, the results are going to be so strong that it will have to fold. And it's a very, very difficult battle to fight to get insurance coverage. What resources would you recommend for you to read? There's a couple of books. I think we can take that offline. Michelle, I can put a list together of recommended reading. I think if you're just interested in the science of new neuronal growth, I would just Google search right now, because in the last 30 days, you saw a ton of articles come out about this, about neuronal growth in the hippocampus. And this is really the connection. The neuronal growth in the hippocampus is the exciting thing to start with. Our current centers are in Ohio and Kentucky. New Albany, Ohio. Okay, great. Um, And Michelle, you can get back to Lauren with the cost and length of the programs and
Yep,
the different options that we have.
for sure.
Um, okay. We're double. Vivistin had a 5-point Fugl-Meyer gain, so our result here was 10. Mhm. The sessions are 3 hours a day. They're 2 hours of neuroanimation and then 1 hour of consolidation where we work on the activity that you're trying to improve. So, and it's, yeah, so and that happens for 5 days a week for 3 weeks. We'll have a recording of the presentation, and we'll be able to give that to you.
Okay. Any other last minute questions? We've got about 5 more minutes.
Great questions.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So as Omar mentioned, I will be sending out the recording of tonight's call within the next hour or two. So expect that from me. I have everyone's email address. If you registered for the webinar, you're obviously on here. I have your email address. Please feel free to share this recording with family members, any support groups you're a part of, anyone that you think in your community that this information would be helpful. And then I'm also, if you are interested in exploring next steps, in that same email, there'll be a link to schedule a free one-on-one consultation. And we can just discuss if this would be appropriate for you or your loved one, just kind of give you some individualized guidance that you may have not gotten on this call. And I'll also have my contact information as well, phone number, email. You guys feel free to call or email me anytime. But we really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to be with us tonight. We hope you found it very valuable. And with that, if you didn't get your questions answered, please feel free to reach out again. But I hope everyone has a lovely evening, and we look forward to speaking with you guys soon.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks again to Tony for sharing tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone, take care.